is breaking the taboo of talking about these, quite awkward and sometimes embarrassing subjects with your children. Are you struggling with that?
Well, we're now going to have an awkward conversation with our next guest. She is Kate Dawson, an amazing person. She believes that topics such as masturbation and pornography should actually be opened up, be taught in schools to pupils as young as 8 years of age. And that might be quite sensationalist because, I'm taking that from a newspaper report. But basically, that's what you do, Kate.
Yeah, really. So I suppose I normally wouldn't work with children as young as 8. Generally, I'd be around 11 years old.
But still at primary?
But in primary
last
school.
Year of primary?
Yeah, most of the work that I do is in secondary schools, so with people between the ages of 14 and 16. But when we do work in primary schools, I think it's really important that we start talking about how it's normal to explore your own body in a private space, if that's something that you want to do, and that it can feel nice. Because, we're meeting a lot of young girls in particular who are absolutely disgusted by their genitalia. And, we do this activity where we show like a very realistic kind of illustration of the vulva and of the penis. And when we take the penis out, there's like a big laugh. Everybody thinks it's really funny. But then we take the vulva out, you sometimes hear like, oh my God, that's disgusting.
And why are they disgusted by their own bodies?
I think there's a lot of pressure on young girls to have genitals that look a certain way and maybe to get rid of their pubic hair.
Right, so is that about pornography? Because I know you've done a lot of research into pornography and how it affects the sexual behaviour of young people. So is that what you believe, that they're watching pornography at a young age because they have access to it, they're walking around with mini computers in their hands most of the time, and they believe that that's how women should look and behave, and boys think the same?
Yeah, I think so, because I suppose, we don't get to see other people's genitals, ever. The only place that we get to see other people's genitals is porn. And the people who are in porn are hired because of maybe the types of bodies that they have. Like for men, for example, they're, a lot larger than average. And when we ask students, what do you think the average penis size is? They all say like, 9, 10 inches. And the reality is it's between 4 and 6 for an adult man. But they're only they're only getting ideas about what genitals might look like, and especially for women who work in the pornography industry as well. Some women might have had labia reductions, and then people who might have larger, uneven labia, which is completely normal, might think that there's something wrong with theirs, or that theirs is ugly.
Yeah. There's no point, I suppose, those of us of a different generation comparing what you're doing or judging it by our standards. And the reason I say that is times have changed. It's completely different. People are desensitised by sexual imagery in adverts, in access to pornography.
Even music videos.
All sorts of things. And I would say that I would be the sort of parent who now would probably say, thank goodness there's someone like Kate around, leave it to her. Leave it to her, because I don't have to talk about this.
Yeah, I think a lot of parents are relieved and that they're really happy, that we're going into schools and talking to the kids about it. But it also gives them the opportunity to start having these conversations if they want to. Sometimes I think it's hard both for kids and for parents to just start having the conversation. But then, if they've heard that their kid is having, sex education in school that day, they can ask, what did you learn? But what I do find that's been really useful for a lot of parents who have really successful conversations with their kids is having short and simple conversations rather than sitting them down and having, the talk, because that's, I suppose, it's quite intimidating to
children
cover all of...
cringe the minute the parents go, let's sit down and we need to talk about, the birds and the bees that would have been in our days. You just go,
it's like, oh my God, stop talking to me. Yeah.
But it's more than that. It's not just about getting pregnant or reproduction, whatever. This is self-pleasuring.
But also consent, all these kind of issues that have to be raised.
One topic at a time, darling. I'm into self-pleasuring here. Why is self-pleasuring important or so important? Is it not an optional extra?
Well, I guess it's something that most people do, and that boys are definitely more comfortable talking about it. But when we're talking about, self-pleasure and, what it's like, or what might feel good for a person who has a vulva and what might feel good for a person who has a penis, it's really important that people of the the opposite gender, I guess, can have an idea of what it might be like, because sometimes we're talking to young girls and they're being really badly hurt by their partners who don't understand that you need to be quite gentle with that part of the body.
You're talking physically hurt here? Physically
hurt, yeah, where the vagina might be bruised or cut even.
And they don't know how to say stop.
And sometimes, they're a bit, they just don't want to make their partner feel bad, so they don't want to embarrass them, so they just don't say anything. But it's really about, what we do, I guess, is really about being able to give people the skills so that they can say, this is what I like and this is what I don't like, and this is, you know, and how to communicate consent is a huge part of that.
Right. So you do this as young as Ruth was saying, about 11 there.
Yeah.
And to mixed classes, boys and girls together.
Yes.
So you're invited into the schools.
Yeah.
And if it was a mixed group, I sort of understand a one-on-one tuition on this. But, I mean, if I think back to my own school days, that would have been disaster. Could you imagine?
Well, I would imagine they start off all giggling and nudging, but eventually do you capture their attention? And...
Yeah. But, you know, it's funny because I suppose we generally would do 3 sessions. So we do an hour and a half one week and then we come back the next week and we give them the chance to write an anonymous question at the end of each session and we come back and answer all of those the next week. And in the first session, everybody just is losing it when we say the word vagina. So they just find it so funny. But then when you start talking about sexual pleasure and when you start talking about masturbation, you start talking about pornography, you can generally like just see them like leaning in and listening to you really intently because it's stuff that people haven't really said to them before.
We see, I do think sometimes parents, maybe we're burying our heads in the sand. People say, well, my child doesn't watch pornography. In your experience, talking to these children as young as 8, some of them 11, how many children are watching pornography?
So we collected some data last year at our university in Galway, and we found that about 60% of young students, so students who are between 18 and 24, 60% said that they first saw porn under the age of 13. So the majority
under 13, yeah.
So between 10 and 13. And you know, some of that might be accidental exposure. I was chatting to a woman the other day, and her son was playing Minecraft, and then something popped up online where it was like 2 characters from Minecraft having sex. So yeah, a lot of it is intentional and that they're actually Googling it, but sometimes people will Google boobs because they'll want to know what boobs look like, and then they'll be brought to a more explicit
sometimes it can be
site.
some quite hardcore pornography
Yeah,
that they
it can
didn't
be.
intend looking at.
Yeah.
Well, Kate is studying for a PhD in psychology, researching porn. She believes children as young as primary school children should be taught about masturbation and porn in school. I have to admit, when I read this, I was quite taken aback, but I actually think I'm glad you're there. I think it's a good service.
Well, at the moment, I think it's good. But at the moment, I mean, I haven't got time to read all of these, but quite a few of the comments coming in from you, thank you for those. Laura says schools should not be allowed to determine when children get taught these things. It's up to parents. And I'm sure Laura maybe does that with her own children, but some parents don't, do they? And they're probably the children that need you.
That's the thing.
Because their parents won't discuss it or are too embarrassed to discuss it or maybe have beliefs that they don't want to discuss it.
There's a very unequal distribution of knowledge among young people, that some people have a lot of information and some don't have any. But then they're all they might be socialising together, you know, so it's tricky. And no kid wants to be the person who doesn't know anything about sex.
Yeah, OK.
Kate, thank you very much indeed. Appreciate that.